Hello everyone, welcome back to Sulekha Physics classes. It is the most easiest way to learn all the concept of physics through this class. Hope you all are doing well. Today I am going to start one short revision of chapter 3, that is current, electricity. Some portions are deleted from this chapter like carbon register, color code for carbon registers is a parallel combination of registers. So no need to study these topics from examination point of view. But there are very important topics in this chapter like drift velocity, relation between drift velocity and current, then after that conductance, Ohm's law, electrical resistance, resistivity, the limitations of Ohm's law, then Kirchhoff's law, first and second law, cells are connected in series and parallel, then Wheatstone bridge, potentiometer, all these topics are very, very important. And I will cover each and every topic of this chapter, right? This chapter is very important because this chapter alone consists of 7 marks. So you must prepare this chapter for board exams, and I hope this one short revision will help you. Let us start this chapter, current, electricity. Okay. As the name suggests, current, electricity. Okay, in the last 2 chapters you study about when the charges are at rest, that is electrostatics. But in this chapter you study about what happens when the charges are in motion, that constitutes electric current. Study of physics which deals with the study of charges in motion, that is called current, electricity. So first of all you defined electric current. Electric current is rate of flow of charge. It means charge per unit time. It is denoted by capital I, small I also. This I equal to Q by T for steady charge when the charge is constant with time. If the charge is variable, if charge changes with time, then in that case you use I equal to dQ by dt, right? This is for variable charge and its SI unit is ampere. Its symbol is capital A. From here, one definition is there, 1 ampere. What is 1 ampere, right? Here, Q is in coulomb, T is in second. So 1 ampere is coulomb, 1 ampere is coulomb per second. It means if charge is 1 coulomb, time is in 1 second, then current is 1 ampere. So in this way you can define it is a current. 1 ampere is the current when the number of electrons having 1 coulomb of charge flowing through a given point in 1 second. This forms 1 ampere current, right? Also you have to calculate how many number of electrons flowing in 1 coulomb of charge, right? So there is one important formula, quantization of charge, Q equal to Ne, where Q is total charge, E is charge of electron, its value is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb, N is number of electrons. So when Q is 1 coulomb, then N becomes Q by E, Q is 1 coulomb, and this E is 1.6 into 10 minus 19. After calculating you get 6.25 into 10 to the power 18. It means in 1 ampere 6.25 into 10 to the power 18 number of electrons flowing through a given point in 1 second. Right? So hope you understood this one. Next one is direction of current. What is direction of current? You know, something is required to initiate the flow of charge which forms current. So how charge flow? Due to the application or connection of battery in the circuit. So there are 2 terminals in the cell. This is positive, this one is negative, right? Suppose here one bulb is connected, right? Now direction of current is always from the positive end to negative end of the electrode of the cell. We'll discuss cell in detail after completing some topics, right? So you must remember that it is this negative electrode has more number of negative charge, so electrons flow in this direction. Electron flow in this direction, right? And direction of current is in this direction. It means direction of current is always opposite to the flow of electrons. Opposite. Or you can say from positive to negative end of the electrode of the cell, right? One more thing. Direction of current is there, but still current is what type of quantity? Current is a scalar quantity, right? Because it does not follow scalar vector law of addition. If there are 2-3 wires, suppose in one wire current is flowing in this direction another wire current is flowing in this direction. So total current at this point is that just nothing, it doesn't matter what is the angle between these two wires, it just add the total current at this point. Simply it adds like scalar quantity, right? So current is a scalar quantity, it is not a vector quantity. You must remember this one. After that, next topic is that flow of charge, mechanism of flow of charge in a conductor. What happens when charge flows inside a conductor? What type of current is produced? What type of motion of charge is there? So we'll discuss these things. Okay, please take a screenshot of this one fast. Now, flow of electric charges in a conductor. How charge or electrons flows inside the conductor? There are two cases. First is at room temperature, normal condition when no battery is connected to the conductor. It means no electric field is applied. Without electric field, I can say without battery. Then what happens, you know, there are large number of free electrons inside the conductor and all electrons are randomly moving in all possible directions. There is no particular fixed direction. Electrons are moving this way, that way. Electrons are randomly moving, right? And this random motion of electrons in a conductor at room temperature is called thermal velocity. Okay, at room temperature, due to temperature of the surroundings, electrons randomly moving in all possible directions. This forms thermal velocity. As it is not moving in a particular direction, there is random motion. So average of thermal velocity is always zero. Average thermal velocity is always zero. Okay. Now next, second case, when external electric field is applied. It means when a battery or cell is connected to the circuit. With battery, you can write with battery. Now what happens when battery is connected to this conductor? All electrons start moving due to this battery. This one is positive terminal, this one is negative terminal. Electrons experiences some force and they starts accelerating. They starts moving in a particular direction towards the positive terminal of this conductor. This is positive, so this one is positive, this one is negative. All electrons start moving towards the positive end of this battery and this forms drift velocity of electrons. This velocity is called drift velocity, right? So there are two types of velocity. One is thermal velocity when no battery is connected to the cell. That random motion of electrons at room temperature forms thermal velocity. And when battery is connected to the cell, under the application of this battery, electrons starts drifting or moving towards the positive end terminal of the battery, or you can say positive end of the conductor, and this forms drift velocity of electrons. It is represented by Vt, right? Now, what is the expression for this drift velocity? Take a screenshot of this one. Then next we'll discuss expression for drift velocity. Now, expression for drift velocity of electron. You know what is thermal velocity, what is drift velocity. Initially, when no electric field is applied, it means no battery is connected to a conductor, then random motion of electron constitutes thermal velocity. But when battery is connected to a conductor, it means when electric field is applied, then under the action of that electric field, electrons starts moving in a particular direction towards the positive end of the conductor. That constitutes thermal velocity, right? So you can write initially at room temperature without electric field, average thermal velocity of each electron is 0, because you know na, suppose this is a conductor, right, and electrons are moving randomly in all possible directions without battery when no electric field is applied, and the average of this thermal velocity of electron is always 0. So you can write average thermal velocity of electron is 0, equation number 1. Now what happens when this cell is connected to the conductor? Under the application of this electric field, electron experiences force and they starts accelerating, moving in a particular direction toward the positive end of the conductor. Right? So how much force it experiences? That force is given by F equal to minus E into E. E is the charge of electron. And electron starts moving towards the positive end, that is opposite direction of electron. with some velocity. That velocity is called drift velocity. So what is the expression for that drift velocity, or you can say final velocity? That is equal to initial velocity is V average, and after applying electric field, right, it starts moving, it has some acceleration. A is given by what? You know, F equal to ma. So A is F by m. It means F is, put the value of F minus E by m. So you get the value of A. So final velocity of electron becomes, that is drift velocity is given by initial velocity V average plus acceleration into, this is tau. Tau is called relaxation time. What is relaxation time? Average time between two successive collisions of electrons. How much time taken by electron to collide with another electron between two successive collisions, that time taken by the electron is called relaxation time. So this is drift velocity. Initial velocity V average plus final velocity is A tau. So total velocity becomes drift velocity. You know, V average is 0 when no electric field is applied. So this Vd becomes minus, this is 0. So you put the value of this A here from this equation number 2, minus E by m into tau. So this becomes Vd equal to minus E tau by m. This is the final expression for drift velocity of electron. You must remember this formula. It's very useful when you are solving some numericals, right? And this drift velocity decreases with time. Right now, this is relaxation time, but negative sign is there. It means as the time increases, collision increases, and this resists the motion of electron and their velocity decreases. So drift velocity decreases with time. And also negative sign shows that direction of drift velocity is always opposite to the direction of electric field. Electric field is always from positive to negative 10. So this is direction of electric field and electrons are moving in this direction. So drift velocity is also in this direction. So this negative sign shows that direction of this drift velocity is always opposite to the direction of electric field. Now, due to this drift velocity, it constitutes some current inside a conductor. So what is the relation between that drift velocity and current? We'll see in the next. Right? Please take a screenshot of this one. Now, relation between current and drift velocity. You know, drift velocity is produced inside the conductor under the application of electric field. It means when a cell or battery is connected to a conductor, drift velocity is produced inside the conductor, and due to that drift velocity, current is produced. So what is the expression for that current and what is relation between current and drift velocity, right? For that one, let's suppose that this L is the length of the conductor. This is length L of the conductor, and A is area of cross section of this conductor. So what is the volume of conductor? Volume of conductor is A into area into length, right? Also suppose that small n is the number of electrons per unit volume. Total volume is A into L, but small a is the number of electrons per unit volume. So what is total number of electrons? That is N into capital V, volume. And this volume is area into length, so NaL. This is the total number of electrons. Now, these are total number of electrons. Now, what is the charge on that total number of electrons? You know, Q equal to Ne. N is the total number of electrons. You put the value of N from here, small NaL. So, total charge on this number of electrons becomes Q equal to NeAl. Now, due to this potential difference, electric field is set up inside this conductor. What is direction of that electric field? From this positive to negative terminal of the conductor, right? And this electric field is given by E equal to V by L. Okay. Now, electron starts moving towards the positive end of the conductor under the application of this electric field setup due to potential difference applied by this cell. Okay. Now, what is the time taken by electron to cross the ends of the conductor? That time taken is given by length is what? Length of the conductor is L, and it starts drifting now under the application of electric field. So, velocity is Vd. So T equal to L by Vd, equation number 2. Now you know equation number 1, total charge on these number of electrons and time taken by electrons to cross the ends of the conductor is L by Vd. What is the formula for current? Current I is equal to Q by T. You put the value from equation number 1, Q is NEAL and this T is L by Vd. So this becomes this, in place of Q write NEAL and T L by Vd. This L cancel, it becomes NEAVD. This is the expression for current. You must remember this one, I equal to NEAVD. From here it's clear that I is directly proportional to drift velocity. But this drift velocity is very small. Still, there are large number of electrons having these velocities now, so the current is also large. In another form, if you know the formula for drift velocity, what is that one? Vd is equal to minus EE tau by m. Okay, negative sign shows direction, so neglect negative sign. So in place of Vd, you put EE tau by m. Then equations becomes I equal to NE square AE tau by m. And if you put the value of V, E is what? V by L. Then it becomes NE square A V tau by ml. This is also another form of the current, but this is the main relation between current and drift velocity. It's very, very important. We generally ask in the exam. Right? Hope you understood. Please take a screenshot of this one. Right? After this, we'll discuss small topics like current density, mobility. Then now, there is a very small topic, that is current density and mobility. It's a very small topic. Just know what is its formula and what is definition. Okay. So first is current density. You know that current is a scalar quantity, but in physics, when we study about current, you want its direction. So to represent direction of current, we use a vector quantity, and that is current density. Current density represents direction of current and it is a vector quantity. Suppose this is a conductor, right? And a cell is connected to a conductor. Now current starts flowing from this positive terminal to this side, right? Current is flowing in this direction, okay? Suppose this is a small sectional area or small, okay? Now how much current is flowing through this area? That is called current density, and direction of current density is same as that of direction of current. It is represented by capital J. So how much current is flowing through a particular area is called current density, provided the direction of current and area both are normal to each other, right? Suppose this is a plane area and current is flowing like this one, okay? Both are normal to each other, so that current passes through this area, and direction of current density is same as that of the area. So you can write it this way: current density J is current per unit area, provided the area is held normal to the current. Provided area is held or kept normal to the direction of current flow, right? So J is equal to I by A. What is the value of I in terms of drift velocity? NEAVD, right? So you put the value of NEAVD by A cancel, it becomes NEVD. And what is the value of VD? EE tau by m, so that it becomes NE square E tau by m. This is the formula for current density. Must remember this one, J equal to NE square E tau by m. It is a vector quantity and its SI unit is ampere per meter square. I is in ampere, area is meter square. So ampere per meter square, dimension is A, L to the power minus 2, right? Next one is mobility. What is this mobility, right? Mobility represents when electric field is applied, electron starts drifting towards the positive end of the conductor. So how fast an electron is moving under the application of electric field, that term is represented by mobility. You can write in this way: when electric field is applied, drift velocity of electron increases, so Vd is proportional to E, right? Greater the amount of electric field, greater the drift velocity of electron. So this Vd is equal to mu E. This mu is called mobility. Mobility is represented by mu. And it is mu equal to what? Vd by E. It means ratio of drift velocity to applied electric field. This is the formula for mobility. Mu equal to Vd by E, right? And now this Vd is what? E tau by m. So cancel E, it becomes E tau by m. This is the formula for drift velocity in terms of relaxation time tau. Now again, you know I is what? NeAVd. So you have to write I in terms of mobility, relation between current and mobility. You just put the value of this Vd from here. Vd is what? Mu into E, right now? Mu into E, mu is mobility. So if you put the value of Vd here, I becomes NeA mu E. This is the relation between current and mobility, right? This is very small topic. Just remember, it may come in 1 or 2 marks question, right? Current density and mobility. Please take a screenshot. Then we'll move to the next topic. Now, next one is Ohm's law. This is very important from examination point of view. Okay, what is Ohm's law? Suppose there is a conductor, right? And when you connect this conductor to a cell, what happens? Current starts flowing in this conductor, right? Due to the potential difference of this cell, electric field is set up and that exerts force on the electron, and electron starts moving, current is produced inside the conductor. So suppose V is the potential difference applied across these ends of the conductor, right? Potential difference is V and current I is produced. So greater the amount of V, greater is the current produced. V is directly proportional to I. Okay, so this is nothing but Ohm's law. It states that current flowing through a conductor is directly proportional to potential difference applied between the ends of a conductor. If this potential difference changes, then current through the conductor also changes, right? So this V is proportional to I. Therefore, V equal to Ri. R is a constant called electrical resistance. And when you draw the graph of this, okay, one more thing. Provided physical conditions remains constant, it means there is no change in temperature, pressure, temperature constant. Physical temperature, pressure, everything is constant. Then only Ohm's law is valid. If temperature change, then V is not directly proportional to I. So physical conditions remains constant. Then only Ohm's law is applicable. V is directly proportional to I. V equal to R. R is a constant called electrical resistance. We'll discuss electrical resistance after this one, right? Now when you draw a graph between V and I, V is along y-axis and I is along x-axis, you get a straight line passing through the origin, right? This represents Ohm's law. And you know, when you calculate the slope of this graph, right? Slope is means y-axis by x-axis. So y-axis is what? V, and x-axis is what? I. So V by I, and V by I means slope of this graph is V by I, and V by I from here is what? Resistance. It means slope of VI graph gives resistance, right? Greater the slope, greater the resistance, right? You can also calculate slope from this angle theta. Greater is the angle theta, greater is the slope, greater is the resistance from this graph. And it is applicable for smaller values of current. If you increase larger value of current is there, then it deviates from this straight line. It follows this part. It means Ohm's law is not applicable for larger values of current. It is applicable only for smaller values of current, right? This is about Ohm's law. And this Ohm's law is in a scalar form. Which form? Scalar form. A scalar form of Ohm's law. There is no direction. But what is vector form of Ohm's law? It means what is the vector form of this scalar form of Ohm's law? So you just replace V by electric field E. E is a vector quantity to represent this V. R resistance, it is replaced by rho, and then I is scalar quantity, it is represented by J. Current density, it is a vector quantity. So E equal to rho J. This is vector form of Ohm's law. One more thing, you can also write in terms of conductivity. Conductivity is reciprocal of resistivity represented by sigma. So when you replace this rho is what? Resistivity. We will discuss this also, this term in detail when we study about resistance. Rho is resistivity or a specific resistance. So sigma equal to 1 by rho means rho equal to 1 by sigma. From here J equal to sigma E. This is also another form, vector form of Ohm's law. You can write E equal to rho J also or J equal to sigma E also. These two are vector form of Ohm's law. On the basis from this Ohm's law, we can divide the conductors in two types. One, those which follows Ohm's law, and one, those which do not follow Ohm's law, right? So conductors are of two types. I am writing here, conductors are of two types. One is ohmic conductor, OH, and another one is non-ohmic conductor, non-ohmic. Ohmic conductors are those which obey Ohm's law, right? And non-ohmic conductors are those which do not obey Ohm's law. In case of ohmic conductor, those which obeys or follows Ohm's law, it means graph between V and I is a straight line. Example, metallic conductor. Follow Ohm's law like this one. Graph is between V and I is a straight line passing through the origin. But non-ohmic conductor, example, semiconductor diode. Semiconductor diode. Graph is not a straight line. If you draw a graph between V and I, it is like this one, forward bias and this reverse bias. Okay, so graph is not a straight line, it takes some curve. It means it does not follow Ohm's law. So on the basis of this, conductors are of two types, ohmic and non-ohmic conductor. Ohmic conductor are those which obeys Ohm's law. Non-ohmic conductor are those which do not obey Ohm's law. Please take a screenshot. After this, I will discuss specific resistance and resistivity. Now, next topic is electrical resistance. What is this? It is the property of the conductor that resists flow of current. It opposes the flow of current. What happens? Suppose this is a conductor, right? When you connect this with cell, now due to this cell, potential difference is created along the ends of the conductor, right? And if this potential difference increases, current starts moving inside the conductor, and that current also increases, right? This is Ohm's law. V is proportional to I. Greater the amount of potential difference, greater is the current flowing through the conductor. And this V equal to Ri, and R is a constant called resistance inside the conductor. It is equal to V by I. But what is this resistance? What is the physical meaning of why is the need of resistance in this electrical circuit, right? Without this, no use of Ohm's law. Why? Actually, what happens when a potential difference is applied across the ends of the conductor, electron starts moving, right? And large amount of current is produced. But due to large amount of current, what happens? Large amount of heat is produced inside the conductor and it damages the circuit. So to avoid that damage and to the control flow of current, we require this resistance, right? So resistance helps to avoid damage and control flow of current. But where it is present? It is present inside the conductor itself. When large amount of current flows, the electron starts moving in a direction opposite the direction of electric field. It means put towards positive terminal, and hence it collides with other positive ions and its motion restricts. It means it decreases current itself inside the conductor. More collision means its motion decreases, its velocity decreases and its currents also decreases. So more collision means more resistance. Collision is related to resistance. More collision means more resistance. Less collision means less resistance, right? Okay, so in this way you can define resistance. It tries to opposes the flow of current. It resists the flow of current and its SI unit is ohm, right? R equal to V by I. But what is the expression for this resistance? Actual expression is what? On what factors it depends? So we can easily derive this from the previous whatever we have got the expression for drift velocity, right? Current, from that one we can derive the expression for this resistance R. Okay, let us see how. From Ohm's law, you know, V equal to Ri, so R is V by I. Now I is what? Due to drift velocity inside the conductor, current is given by NEAVD. A is the area of this cross section, right? This is A. You put the value of Vd in terms of electric field. Vd is what? EE minus EE tau by M. Minus sign is just for direction. So you can write in place of Vd EE tau by M. Now you get NE square AE tau by M. Now what is this E? E is what? E is V by L. Right? So this is the expression for I. Now you put this value of I in this R. R becomes V by I. I is this one, NE square AE tau by M. In place of V, you put E into L. Right? So this V is EL. You take M in the numerator, M by NE square AE tau. R equal to ML by NE square tau. This is the expression for resistance. M by NE square tau L by A. It means resistance depends on this M by NE square tau L by A, right? Actually at fixed temperature, this term mass of electron, number of electrons, charge of electron, relaxation time, all quantities are constant. So resistance basically depends on this length of the conductor, area of cross section of the conductor, and this constant term. If temperature changes, this term also changes. This term is temperature dependent. So resistance also depends on temperature and nature of material, right? So next one is on which factors resistance depends. Please take a screenshot of this one, right? Fast. Now, next one is factors on which resistance depends. You know what is the expression for resistance? We already got this one, R equal to M by NE square tau L by A, right? So, this resistance depends on length of the conductor, area of cross section of the conductor. But how it depends? Suppose this is a conductor of length, suppose L. If the length of the conductor increases, means electrons suffer more collision. More collision means more resistance. It means resistance is directly proportional to length of the conductor. If the area of cross section of this conductor increases means like this one. Okay, if area of this cross section increases, it means electrons get enough space to move. It means less collision, so less resistance. So resistance is inversely proportional to area of cross section, and also it depends on nature of material of the conductor. This term represents nature of material of the conductor, and also resistance varies with temperature of conductor. This quantity is constant for a fixed temperature. It is constant for fixed temperature. If temperature changes, then this quantity also changes and resistance also changes. So resistance depends on nature of material of the conductor, also temperature of conductor. In this way, combining these equations, you get R is directly proportional to L by A. R equal to, remove this proportionality constant, R equal to rho L by A, and this rho is a constant called a specific resistance or resistivity, right? What is this resistivity and on which factor it depends? So next topic is specific resistance. Actually R equal to rho L by A. How you define this resistivity? If L is 1 meter, area is 1 meter square, then resistivity equal to R. So resistivity of a conductor is equal to resistance inside the conductor if conductor is of length 1 meter and area of cross section 1 meter square. In this way you define resistivity, right? Resistivity is equal to resistance when length of the conductor is 1 meter, area of cross section is 1 meter square. Note down. What is the SI unit of this resistivity? Resistivity is what? Resistivity equal to R A by L. So R is in ohm, A by L means meter. Ohm meter is the SI unit of resistivity, right? Now what is the expression for resistivity? This is R equal to rho L by A, right? Now R equal to rho L by A, and R is also m by n square tau L by A. So what is the value for this resistivity? If you compare these two equations, rho equal to m by n square tau. It means rho is m by n square tau. So on which factor this depends? It depends on nature of material of the conductor. For a particular conductor, mass is how much mass is there? Number density, electron, relaxation time, and it is constant for a specific conductor, right? If there is a specific conductor, it is made up of some material. For that one, mass, number density, and charge of electron is always fixed. Relaxation of all these are constant. So this specific resistance is constant for a specific material of the conductor, right? It depends on nature of material of the conductor, but this values changes with temperature. It depends on temperature. If temperature changes, then relaxation time also changes, number density also changes. So this resistivity depends on temperature and it is constant for a specific material, and also it does not depend on length and area. It means it is independent on shape and size of the conductor, right? So this is about resistance and specific resistance. Now how this resistance and specific resistance depends on temperature, changes with temperature. So please take a screenshot, then we will discuss that topic. Okay. Now temperature dependence of resistivity. How resistivity varies with temperature. You know resistance is what? R equal to rho L by A. Here rho is called resistivity. It means resistance is proportional to resistivity. So as the resistivity changes, resistance also changes, right? And what is the formula for this resistivity? M by N square tau. It means at a fixed temperature, all these quantities are constant, but when the temperature changes, these quantities also changes. Mass of electron is fixed, right? Charge of electron is fixed, but number, density and relaxation time changes as the temperature changes. So this resistivity, or you can say resistance, both resistivity and resistance are inversely proportional to number density and inversely proportional to relaxation time. Now how this resistivity varies with temperature in case of metals, semiconductors and alloys. Let us discuss one by one. For metals, you know, suppose this is a conductor, right? Okay, this is connected to a battery. As the temperature of this conductor increases, what happens? Velocity of the electrons also increases and they collide very fast. It means relaxation time decreases. So as temperature increases, velocity increases, relaxation time decreases. And number density is fixed for metals, right? N is fixed for metals. There is no change in number density. So when temperature increases, when relaxation time decreases, this resistivity increases. So in case of metals, as temperature increases, resistivity also increases. You draw a graph like this one. This is resistivity and temperature. I am drawing graph for particular metal copper. So as the temperature increases, resistivity also increases in case of metals. Now let us discuss for semiconductors. Number density of inside the metal and semiconductor different. Inside the metal, number density is fixed, but in case of semiconductor, electrons are tightly bonded. When increase the temperature, their number density increases, right? They are ready to free move here and there. So in case of semiconductor, when temperature increases, velocity also increases, relaxation time decreases. There is a decrease in relaxation time, so resistivity increases, but there is also increase in number density when temperature increases in case of semiconductor. So when this number density increases, resistivity what? Decreases. And this increase in number density is more than relaxation time. So when temperature increases, resistivity decreases in case of this semiconductor. For a germanium or silicon, graph is like this one. It decreases with increase in semiconductor temperature, right? Now next for alloys. Here temperature increases, resistivity increases, but this increases very much less as compared to metal. It is nearly about independent of temperature. That's why it is used for making a standard resistor. For example, nichrome constanta inside the press, nichrome wire is used, and that is alloys because it is independent of temperature. So suppose nichrome wire graph is like this one. It is constant up to this temperature and then it increases, little bit increases with the increase in temperature. So almost independent of temperature. So these are temperature dependence of resistivity for different cases, metals, semiconductors and alloys. So graphically I represent these things, but what is the mathematical expression for temperature dependence of resistivity? How we express this in one expression? Let us see. Please take a screenshot of this one, right? Fast. Now, mathematical expression for how resistivity varies with temperature. At any temperature, expression is this one. RT equal to R naught 1 plus alpha T, where RT is resistance at any temperature T degrees Celsius. R naught is resistance at 0 degrees Celsius. T is any temperature, and alpha is called temperature coefficient of resistance. From this expression, alpha becomes RT minus R naught by R naught T. It's clear now. R naught is resistance, initial resistance at any temperature. This is final resistance at T temperature by R naught T. Its SI unit is, it's clearly resistance same ratio per degree Celsius or Kelvin. Now you know in case of metals what happens? Resistance or resistivity increases with increase in temperature. So RT minus R naught is positive. It means alpha is positive in case of metals, right? In case of semiconductor, resistivity decreases or resistance decreases with temperature. It means this term is negative. So alpha is also negative. And in case of alloy, resistivity is positive. So this formula is very important for numericals purpose also. You must remember this one. Alpha is called temperature coefficient of resistance and it is equal to RT minus R naught by R naught T. After this, there are some limitations of Ohm's law. Please take a screenshot fast. Now, there are some limitations of Ohm's law. What is Ohm's law? V is proportional to I. It means V equal to Ri, and graph for Ohm's law is between V and I. Graph is like this one. V this side, okay, suppose I this side. Graph is a straight line passing through the origin. Those conductors or those materials which have graph like this one, a straight line passing through the origin, it means it obeys Ohm's law, and that material is called ohmic conductor. But there are certain materials which does not obey Ohm's law. It means in that case, graph between V and I is not a straight line. Like for example, behavior of diode. This is the VI characteristics of diode. Diode is a device having unidirectional, which produces unidirectional current, right? This side voltage, this side current. This is forward biasing is there. So sometime current is constant when you increase V, and after that increases with the increase in V. Again here also in reverse biasing auto increases instantly. So it is not a straight line like metals. Okay, so it does not obey Ohm's law, right? And this type of materials are called non-ohmic conductors. Again for voltmeter also VI characteristics is like this one. It is constant for some voltage, increases, current is constant, after that it increases. So it also not obey Ohm's law because graph is not a straight line passing through the origin. So these are certain limitations of Ohm's law. Please write down. After that we'll move to the next topic. Now next next important topic is electrical energy and power. What do you mean by this electrical energy? Okay, then electrical power. Suppose this is a conductor and a cell is connected to this conductor. Now what happens? Due to this cell, a potential difference is developed across the ends of the conductor. This one is positive terminal, so this end of the conductor becomes positive, and this one is negative, so this end becomes negative, and a potential difference V is created along the ends of this conductor. Now due to this potential difference, what happens? You know, everything electron starts moving, it gains some kinetic energy, right? So whatever amount of energy supplied by this battery, that is electrical energy, is used in moving a charge from this end to another end, right? So the work done or electrical energy supplied by this battery in carrying a charge Q is given by, you know na, what is V? V is work done per unit charge, amount of work done carrying a charge from one end to another end. So total work done becomes V into Q. This is work done by the battery in carrying a charge from one point to another point. Or this work done is also called electrical energy supplied by the battery, and this is given by W equal to Q into V. Suppose due to the movement of this charge Q, I amount of current flows through the circuit, through this conductor. So I current in time t is given by, you know, Q equal to IT, right? Now you put the value of this Q in equation 1, so work done becomes VIT. This work done or supplied energy supplied by this battery, this is called electrical energy, is used by the charge particles to move from one end to another end. Now what happens? Due to the movement of these electrons, electron gains kinetic energy, and during their motion it leaves behind the positive ions, right? Now because positive ions are very heavy, they are immobile. So when another electron comes, it collides with these positive ions. That electrons, electrical energy gained by the electrons is supplied to the positive, given to the positive ions, and these positive ions start accelerating up and down. During their motion, what happens? The temperature of this surrounding the conductor increases and heat energy is produced. Okay, and that heat energy is nothing but electrical energy supplied by the battery, or work done by the battery in moving a charge from one end to another end. So the amount of heat energy dissipated in time t is given by this work done is nothing but amount of heat energy dissipated, right? This is equal to VIT. Now you can write in another form also from Ohm's law, you know, V equal to RI. So you put in place of V RI, so it becomes I square RT, or you can put in place of I V by R, then it becomes V square by RT. So equation 3, 4 and 5, all three are heat energy dissipated, right, inside the conductor due to the electrical energy supplied by the battery. And that heat energy is denoted by H is equal to VIT equal to I square RT equal to V square by RT. And this equation is also called Joule's law of heating, right? SI unit of this heat energy is also joule, and you know 1 calorie is equal to 4.18 joule. So the heat energy dissipated inside the conductor is directly proportional to I square R and directly proportional to T, right? And this heat energy dissipated is applicable only for ohmic conductor. If the circuit is purely resistive, right, then whole amount of electrical energy supplied by the battery or cell is used as heat energy. Okay, so this is about electrical energy, and that electrical energy is converted into heat energy inside the conductor. Expression is given by H equal to VIT equal to I square RT equal to V square by RT. You must remember all three forms, right? After this, electrical power. Please take a screenshot of this one fast. Next, electrical power. What is electrical power? It is the rate at which the electrical energy supplied by this battery is converted into another forms of energy. So electrical power, you can write work done per unit time, and that work done is nothing but electrical energy supplied by the battery. So you can write heat energy also, H by T, and you know the formula for H is what? Heat energy, VIT equal to I square RT equal to VA square by RT. So you put these values here. So power becomes, in place of H, first you write VIT by T, this TT cancel, it becomes VI. Again I square RT, again you divided by T, TT cancel, I square R. And another form, VA square by RT, right? Again work done per unit time, TT cancel, VA square by R. So these are different forms of power. Power equal to VI equal to I square R equal to VA square by R. You must remember this one, helpful in numericals, right? What is the SI unit of power? SI unit of power is watt, denoted by capital W also. There are some other bigger units like kilowatt, megawatt, horsepower, right? 1 kilowatt, 10⁻³ watt, you have to convert into SI units. 1 megawatt, 10⁻⁶ watt, 1 horsepower, commercial unit of power, 746 watt, right? Now, there is another commercial unit of energy. It is also very, very important. You know, these commercial units are generally used at home. At home, electrical energy is used in terms of kilowatt hour, right? So 1 unit is equal to 1 kilowatt hour, and in 1 kilowatt hour, how much energy is used? You just convert into joule, right? So 1 kilowatt hour means 1000 watt into 3600 second, 1 hour. And after calculating, you get 3.6 into 10⁶ joule. So 1 kilowatt hour equal to 3.6 into 10⁶ joule, right? It's very important for numerical part, right? So these are about electrical energy and power. You just remember these expressions. If you know electrical energy, then you just divide it by T, you get electrical power, right? Okay, please take a screenshot. Now, next part in this chapter is about cell, then combination of cells, then Kirchhoff's law, other things are there. So, almost more than half part is over, some part is left. So, what is this cell? Cell is actually a device which converts chemical energy into electrical energy. You studied about cell in chemistry. A cell has 2 electrodes. One is cathode, another one is anode. Cathode is made up of copper, it is positive, and anode is made up of zinc, it is negative. Inside the cell, electrolytic solution is there and chemical reactions takes place inside the cell, and this converts chemical energy into electrical energy, which is used in the circuits to current flow, conversion of chemical energy into electrical energy, right? So, outside the cell, direction of current is from positive terminal to negative terminal of the cell, and inside the cell, direction of current is from negative electrode to positive electrode of the cell. This is the symbol for cell. Positive electrode, longer line, and negative electrode, shorter line. And this is symbol for cell, positive and negative, right? Now, when cell are used in the circuit, it means cell is discharged, and during discharging of cell, current always flows from positive to negative terminal of the cell, right? When once the cell is discharged, again you have to charge that cell. Then during charging of cell, suppose the cell has voltage 2 volt. Now you want to charge this, so you connect another higher voltage cell and connect positive terminal to this positive terminal and negative to this negative, so that it becomes a circuit, right? Now what happens? During discharging of cell, the current flows from this negative terminal to positive terminal of the cell, right? So different things are there. During discharging, when cells are used, current flows from positive to negative, and during charging, current flows from negative to positive terminal of the cell. Don't confuse, just remember these things, and this is the symbol of cell, right? Now there are different terms related to cell like EMF of the cell, terminal potential difference of the cell, and internal resistance. Please note down this one fast. Now different terms related to the cell. First one is electromotive force or EMF of the cell. Second one is terminal potential difference, and third one is internal resistance of the cell. This is the symbol for cell right now. And when this cell is not connected to the circuit, so whatever potential difference between the terminals of the cell is called EMF of the cell. It is maximum potential difference between terminals of the cell when no current is drawn from the cell. It means circuit is what? Open. When circuit is open, then potential difference is called EMF of the cell. Now what happens when this cell is connected to the circuit? Now current starts flowing, right? And this time the terminal potential difference between these two ends is not equal to EMF of the cell. That EMF of the cell is used in flowing a charge and hence producing current. So this time the potential difference between electrodes of the cell when current is drawn from the cell, it means circuit is closed. Here circuit is closed. So this time the potential difference between the terminals of the cell is called terminal potential difference, represented by capital V. EMF of the cell is represented by this capital E, not like this one electric field, just epsilon type, right? And terminal potential difference is denoted by capital V, and this V is always less than E. E is the potential difference when circuit is open, no current is drawn. When current is drawn or flows in this circuit, then potential difference is V. So that E is used, right? So this V is always less than E. You must remember this one. Terminal potential difference is always less than EMF of the cell. And when cell is open, that time maximum terminal potential difference. In this time V equal to E. But when cell is used, then V is always less than E, right? Third term is internal resistance of the cell. There is some internal resistance between the electrodes of the cell. So it is resistance offered by electrolytes of cell to flow current between electrodes. This is internal resistance of the cell, and it works only when the circuit is closed, right? When the circuit is closed, then current flows through this and this internal resistance works. So three terms are there. You must remember this one: electromotive force, EMF of the cell, terminal potential difference, internal resistance of the cell. Now what is the relation between these three terms? Please take a screenshot of this one. Now relation between terminal potential difference, EMF of the cell, and internal resistance of the cell. Suppose this is a cell having internal resistance small r and EMF of the cell is this one, E, right? Now suppose this cell is connected to an external circuit having external resistance capital R. When the circuit is closed, current starts flowing. So this EMF of the cell is used in two ways. First, work done in moving a charge through this external circuit against this external resistance, and then plus worked in moving a unit charge against this internal resistance. So total EMF of the cell is work done against external resistance. I have taken V, terminal potential difference between these terminals of the external resistance, right? Plus V dash. V dash is work done against this internal resistance, this one R. So V dash is here and V is here, right? So EMF of the cell is V plus V dash in taking a unit charge through external resistance R and internal resistance small r. So from Ohm's law, this V is what? I into R, and this V dash is I into small r, right? From here you get the value of current in the circuit, that is I equal to E by R plus R. This is the expression for current in the circuit. Now again, this EMF is used in two ways, V plus V dash. So from here, what is V? Terminal potential difference between that when the cell is used, when the circuit is closed, E minus V dash, and V dash is what? I into R, right? From here, you can easily calculate internal resistance small r. What is a small r? E minus V by I. This is internal resistance of the cell. And what is I by using Ohm's law? V equal to IR in the external circuit. So I becomes V by R. You put the value of I here, V by R. After calculating, you take R in the numerator. Internal resistance small r equal to R. This E by V minus 1. This is the expression for internal resistance of the cell. You must remember this one, right? This formula is important. And the one, this one. V equal to E minus IR. V is the terminal potential difference. E is EMF of the cell, and this small r is internal resistance of the cell. So potential difference across the internal resistance of the cell is I into R. One more thing, during discharging of the cell, when the cell is used, when the circuit is closed, it means cell is discharged, and during that time this formula is valid, V equal to E minus IR, because current flows from positive end to negative end of the cell, right? But during charging of cell, reverse process is there. I already told you, during charging process, current flows from this negative end to positive end. It means you take here sign negative I, negative direction of current, so plus. So V equal to E plus IR. This formula is valid during charging of cell, and during discharging of cell, this formula V equal to E minus IR, because during both the process direction of current is reversed, right? Please take a screenshot after this combination of cells. Now, combination of cells. First one, series combination. What is series combination? When the negative terminal of one cell is connected to the positive terminal of another cell. Again, the negative cell terminal of the second cell is connected to the positive terminal of the next cell. In this way, series combination is formed, right? Let's suppose that this one is first cell, and EMF of the first cell is E1, internal resistance R1. This one is second cell, EMF of this second cell is E2, and internal resistance R2. And let's suppose that I amount of current is flowing through in series, same amount of current is flowing, so I amount of current flowing through this two cells. Now between A and C points, let us suppose that potential at point A is VA, B is VB, and point C is VC. Now what is the potential difference across this AB? Across this AB, potential difference is E1 minus IR1, right? Potential at A is greater than at B, because A is connected to positive terminal and B is connected to negative. So VAB means VA minus VB is E1 minus IR1, equation number 1. Now what is potential difference across this B and C, second cell? So B and C, B is at positive terminal and C is connected to negative terminal. So potential difference across BC is VBC equal to VB minus VC. B is at higher potential, C is at lower potential, and this is equal to E2 minus IR2, right? So we get a potential difference across AB and BC. Now you add these two, you get total potential difference across this A and C points, because potential is a scalar quantity. Just you add potential difference across AB and BC, you get potential difference across AC points. So adding these two, you get potential difference across AC, and this is equal to, just add these two equations, E1 minus IR1 plus E2 minus IR2. You take these E1, E2 one side, VAC equal to E1 plus E2 minus IR1 plus R2. This is equation number 3. Now you combine these two cells to, this is equivalent circuit of this one. These are two cells, you combine these two cells to get equivalent resistance R equivalent, equivalent EMF E equivalent between these two A and C points. So what is the potential difference across this combined cell A and C? So potential difference between A and C of combined cell is E equivalent minus I R equivalent, right? IR equivalent. This is the potential difference across A and C when both cells are combined, and these are when separately we add. So from these 2, 3 and 4 equations, you get both potential difference across AC and AC. So you just compare these two equations. This E equivalent is equal to E1 plus E2, and R equivalent is equal to R1 plus R2. So in case of series combination where two cells are connected in series, you get E equivalent equal to E1 plus E2 and R equivalent equal to R1 plus R2. In this way, n number of cells are connected, so equivalent equal to E1 plus E2 plus E3 dash 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 En. In the same way, R equivalent is R1 plus R2 plus dash 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 Rn. Okay, hope it's clear to you. Please take a screenshot. Then parallel combination. Now parallel combination. In case of parallel combination, positive terminal of both the cell is connected to one point and negative terminal of each cell is connected to another point, so that potential difference across the two cells are same. So in case of parallel combination, potential difference across each cell is same. Suppose this one is first cell, so potential difference across the first cell is VAB and this is E1 minus IR1. Again, potential difference across the second cell is also again VAB and this is equal to E2 minus I2 R2. I1 and I2 are the currents flowing through each cell, right? So both potential difference is same across the two cells. So you take VAB V and this VAB also V. Now from here you get I1. I1 is what? E1 minus V by R1 and I2 is what? E2 minus V by R2. Now you get individual current across each cell. In case of parallel combination, total current I is equal to I1 plus I2. So this I is, you put the value of I1, E1 minus V by R1 plus E2 minus V by R2. Now you solve this one. This I equal to what? E1 by R1 minus V by R1 plus E2 by R2 minus V by R2. You take these two terms V and V to left side. So V by R1 plus V by R2 equal to E1 by R1 plus E2 by R2 minus I. Now you take V common, 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2 equal to, here R1 R2 LCM you take, so E1 R2 plus E2 R1 minus I R1 R2. Here also you take LCM R1 R2, so here R1 plus R2. Now this denominator cancel, you get V equal to E1 R2 plus E2 R1 by, you take this one to denominator side, R1 plus R2 minus I R1 R2 by R1 plus R2. This is equation number 3 when the two cells are connected in parallel. What is its equivalent circuit? Suppose these two cells are combined and it becomes one equivalent cell. Its EMF of the cell is E equivalent and internal resistance is R equivalent. So for combined cell, V is equal to E equivalent minus I R equivalent. Potential difference across AB is what? V I have taken here, so you can also take V equal to E equivalent minus I R equivalent. Now this is equation number 4. Now from 3 and 4 you compare these two equations. Left side both is V, potential difference across AB. So this E equivalent is equal to what? E1 R2 plus E2 R1 by R1 plus R2. So you get E equivalent equal to this one. And I R equivalent is what? R1 R2 by R1 plus R2. You can also write in this way, 1 by R equivalent equal to 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. So these are equivalent resistance and EMF in case of parallel combination. Here R equivalent is 1 by R1 plus R2 as in case of parallel, a series R1 plus R2. And you can also write this equivalent in another form also, E equivalent by R equivalent. When you divide these two equations, now this R1 plus R2, R plus cancel, and this equations becomes E1 by R1 plus E2 by R2. This is also another form. E equivalent, let me check it, is it correct? Okay, E1 by R1 plus E2 by R2. So this is the final result, E equivalent, R equivalent, 1 by R equivalent, this one is E equivalent by R equivalent. So in this way, this is the case of parallel combination, right? After this, we will move to the next topic. Please take a screenshot. Now, next important topic is Kirchhoff's law. There are two laws of Kirchhoff's. One is called Kirchhoff's first law, another one is called Kirchhoff's second law. But why this law is used? where this law is helpful. Actually, we already discussed about series and parallel combination of resistors, cells. If the circuit is very simple, we can simply determine total current in the circuit. But if the circuit is complicated, where you are not able to find series and parallel combination, where two or more cells are connected in the circuit, right? In that case, the circuit is very complicated, and to solve that circuit, we use Kirchhoff's law for complicated circuit, right? So first is Kirchhoff's first law. It is also called junction law or current law. What is junction? Junction is a point where two or more currents meet. So it is also called junction law, current law. Current law means, according to this Kirchhoff's first law, sum of current entering the junction is equal to sum of current leaving the junction. It means total sum, algebraic sum of all the currents at the junction remains 0, right? Suppose this is a junction point O. Here two currents are entering the junction, I1 and I2. So these two currents, I1 plus I2, is always equal to these two currents leaving the junction, I3 and I4. So this I1 plus I2 is equal to I3 plus I4. It means there at the junction, total current, algebraic sum of all current is always 0. So you can write also summation of this equal to 0. In two ways you can define. At any junction, sum of current entering the junction is equal to sum of current leaving the junction. It means this I1 plus I2 equal to I3 plus I4, or algebraic sum of current at a junction is 0. Sum of total currents at the junction is 0. It means total current at the junction 0 means total charge at the junction is 0. So whatever amount of charge flowing through the junction towards the junction is equal to total charge flowing leaving the junction. There is no accumulation of charge at the junction. So this first law is based upon law of conservation of charge. Charge can neither be created nor be destroyed, just transfer from one body to another body. So at the junction, total charge always remains constant. It follows law of conservation of charge. This is about Kirchhoff's first law, right? Suppose 2 ampere current is entering at junction, 3 ampere current is also entering. So sum of entering the current is how much? 3 ampere plus 2 ampere. This is 5 ampere. This is current entering, right? Now sum of current leaving the junction is how much? 1 ampere and 4 ampere. These two currents are leaving the junction. So 4 plus 1. This is also 5 ampere. It means sum of current entering is always equal to sum of current leaving the junction. And this principle is also used when we are solving complicated circuits, right? This is about Kirchhoff's first law. Please take a screenshot fast. Now Kirchhoff's second law. It is also called loop law. If suppose in a circuit there are more than one number of cells, 2, 3, 4 cells are connected, there are more number of resistors, in that case, for that complicated circuit, this second law is very helpful. This is also called loop law. For closed circuit, this law is used, right? According to this law, in a closed loop is closed, algebraic sum of EMFs, if there are number of cells are there, so algebraic sum of all the EMF of all the cells, right, is equal to algebraic sum of product of resistance and respective currents flowing through them. It means if there are 2 or 3 resistors are there and current is flowing through them, then algebraic sum of what? Product of resistance and current, respective currents flowing through that circuit. This is Kirchhoff's second law. It means summation of this EMF, algebraic sum of EMF of all the cells is equal to algebraic sum of product of resistance and respective currents flowing through them. Summation of E equal to summation of IR. It's very important, right? And this law is based on conservation of energy. First law is based upon conservation of charge, but this law is based on conservation of energy. It may come in 1 marks question generally asked on which law on which principle this law is based. So it is based on conservation of energy. But how you apply this law? Simply you just write this is about second law. It is just a statement, but how it is applicable in closed circuit, for that one some steps are there. Now these are different steps while applying Kirchhoff's rule. First one is draw current from one or more cell. If there are number of cells are connected in a loop, now you have to draw different currents passing through that cell, flowing through that cell. Then you have to choose the closed loop in the network. If there are more than one number of loops, 2-3 loops are there, now choose which loop you are using. One, write the name, first loop, second loop, third loop. After that, assume any direction, either clockwise or anti-clockwise. Now after choosing the loop, you have to assume the direction, whether you can choose either positive or negative direction, doesn't matter. You can choose any assumed direction, right? Suppose this is a circuit, one cell is there, 2 resistors are there, and in this circuit, after drawing the currents through the cell, suppose I choose one direction. Here I have taken positive direction. Now after choosing the assumed direction, take EMF positive if assumed direction leaving positive terminal of battery. Here this one is positive terminal, this one is negative terminal. So assumed direction is this one, clockwise. It is leaving, assumed direction is leaving the positive terminal of the battery. So you have to take this EMF positive. It means total EMF of this closed loop is 10. I have to take this 10 positive. After that, total EMF of the cell is equal to sum of product of current and resistor. So there are 2 resistors. So you first write down 5 ohm resistor and 2 ohm resistors. Current in this 5 ohm is I and 2 ohm is I. Now how you sign put here? Again, here you have chosen clockwise direction. The product of I and R is positive if it is in the assumed direction. Here, yes, current is entering in this cell and assumed direction is also through this resistor. Assumed direction is also in the same, both directions are same, current and assumed direction. So I, 5 into I, you have to take positive. Now again, current entering through this 2 ohm and leaving this one. So this current is also, it is in the assumed direction. So here product of I and 2 is also positive. In this way, you have to write equations. If there is more than one loop, two loops, 3 loops, then you have to write number of equations, then you have to solve for the closed circuits. In this way, you have to solve numericals for complicated circuits using Kirchhoff's second rule, or first rule is also used at the junction point, right? Okay, first take a screenshot, then I will solve one example. Okay, how you apply Kirchhoff's rule in this circuit? Here there are 2 closed loop, one is this one and the one is this one. There are 2 cells, right? So first you have to draw current from one or more cell. So let us suppose that from the first cell I1 current is flowing from the positive to negative terminal. From the second cell, suppose I2 current is flowing. So here I1 is flowing, here I2. At this junction point, these 2 currents meet. So this side I1 plus I2 current is flowing, right? And toward this one again I1 in this loop, and here it is I2. So you have to draw current for one or more cell. Choose the closed loop in the network. Suppose here I have chosen anti-clockwise loop. Okay, anti-clockwise loop. Here also suppose I have chosen you can choose any direction, either clockwise or anti-clockwise, right? So I have chosen anti-clockwise loop. Now apply these rules. Assume any direction. Take EMF positive if direction leaving the positive terminal, and product of I and R is also positive, it is in the assumed direction. So suppose I have chosen this first loop first. This one is 1, this one is second loop. So for loop 1, this one, here this is the direction of assumed direction, anti-clockwise. It is leaving the positive terminal. So this E1 is positive, equal to, how many resistors are in this loop 1? R1 and R2. Just write this one, R1 and R2. In R1, I1 current is flowing, and in R2, how much current is flowing? I1 plus I2. Now you have to put sign. Here current I1 is in this direction, it is in the assumed direction, so it is positive. Here assumed direction is anti-clockwise and current is also flowing in this direction, so this one is also positive. In this way, this is equation for loop 1. Now for loop 2, how you write the equation? Here this is cell 2 and EMF, this EMF, direction of EMF is from positive to negative, but this I have assumed anti-clockwise direction. It means it is entering the positive, not leaving the positive terminal. So this is leaving the positive terminal, so I will take negative sign, minus E2, equal to, how many resistors are there in this loop? 2, R2 and R3. In R2, how much current is flowing? I1 plus I2, and in I3, I2 current is flowing. Now I put sign. Here current is flowing in this one through R2, and I have chosen this anti-clockwise direction opposite to this one, so I will take this negative. Again in this I2, loop is anti-clockwise I have chosen. Here current is flowing in this clockwise direction, so again this one is R2. So in this way you write equation. These are two equations for loop 1 and 2. You can also choose this loop 1 also, bigger loop. Here there are two cells, right? You choose any assumed direction and you write the equations according to that one. If the assumed direction is leaving the battery, then you take EMF positive, and also product of I and R you choose positive, it is in the assumed direction. So you must remember these steps. It's very helpful when you are solving questions. Okay, please take a screenshot. Then we'll move to the next topic. Now next one is Wheatstone bridge. What is this Wheatstone bridge? Actually it is an arrangement of 4 resistors in the form of bridge. Along one diagonal, this B and D and galvanometer is connected, and along another diagonal, this A and C, one cell is connected. So here suppose that out of 4 registers, 3 registers are known. Then you can easily calculate the value of 4th unknown register using this Wheatstone bridge under balanced condition. Now what is balanced condition? If no current flows through the galvanometer, it means galvanometer shows no deflection, and at that time the bridge is said to be balanced. And when the bridge is balanced, P by Q equal to R by S. All the registers in the 4 arms of this bridge are balanced. This is balanced condition of Wheatstone bridge. Here if P, Q and R is known, you can easily determine the value of S, unknown resistance. Now how you prove this one? You have to prove this one using Kirchhoff's law, which we discussed already, right? To prove this one, suppose first I have drawn the current. Here I current is flowing. Now at point A it is divided into 2 parts. I1 current is flowing along AB, and left remaining amount of current I minus I1 is flowing through this R register. Okay. Now at point B, this I1, some amount of current is flowing through the galvanometer. Let us take it IG. Now out of I1, IG is flowing through galvanometer. Then left current I1 minus IG is flowing through this arm Q. Again at this point D, this current is also entering, I minus I1, and IG is also entering. So both is added, and along this register S, I minus I1 plus IG current is flowing, and at this junction C, both these currents are added, I1 minus IG and I minus I1 plus IG, and it leaves I amount of current, right? So after drawing the currents in different branches, you assume any one direction. Here I have chosen anti-clockwise direction. So for this loop, A, B, D, A, is there any cell? No. So one side, no cell, no EMF, I have taken 0. But how many resistors are there? P, G and R. You write P, G and R. There are 3 resistors. Through P, I1 current is flowing and I1 is in the same direction, assumed direction, right? Anti-clockwise. So I have taken I1P is positive. Now IG into G. Along this side, current is in this direction, assumed direction is also this one. So IgG is also positive. Next one is this R register. Through this, I minus I1 current is flowing along this side. But I have assumed the loop anti-clockwise. So these two are in opposite direction. That's why I have taken here negative sign. So for loop A, B, D, A, this equation is there, right? Similarly, for loop this one, second, B, C, D, B. Here there are again 3 resistors, Q, S and G. Along Q, how much current is flowing? I1 minus Ig. Along S, I minus I1 plus Ig. And along G, Ig current. Now you have to put sign. So here again I have assumed anti-clockwise direction, and this current I1 minus Ig through this resistor Q is in the same direction as the assumed. So I have taken it as positive, right? Now through S, assumed direction is this one, but current is flowing in this one, opposite. So I have taken here negative. Now along G, current is in this direction, assumed direction is anti-clockwise upward. So both are in opposite. Again I have taken here negative sign. Now in these two equations, suppose when galvanometer shows no deflection, when no current is flowing through the galvanometer, it means Ig is 0 and this is balance condition. Under that case, equation 1 becomes, you take this term 0, right? So I1P plus, not plus, sorry, here minus. I minus I1 are equal to 0. Again for this second equation, this Ig is 0, this Ig is 0, this Ig is 0. So I1Q minus I minus I1S equal to 0. Now you just you take this one, the right side, I1P equal to I minus I1R, one equation. And this one I1Q equal to I minus I1S, another equation. You divide these two equations, right? This I1 cancel, I minus I1 cancel, you get P by Q equal to R by S. This is balance condition of Wheatstone bridge. If you know the value of 3 resistors, you can easily calculate the value of unknown resistor, right? So in this way, if you want to prove, then in this way you have to prove applying Kirchhoff's law. Otherwise, you just write it is an arrangement of 4 resistors in the form of bridge. Along one diagonal, a galvanometer is connected, and along another diagonal, a cell is connected. And the balance condition, P by Q equal to R by S. Okay, hope you understood. Please take a screenshot. Then we will move to the next topic, that is meter bridge. Now, next one is meter bridge or slide wire bridge. What is this meter bridge? It is simplest application of Wheatstone bridge and it is used to measure unknown resistance of a wire. On which principle it is based? It is based on the principle of Wheatstone bridge. Under balance condition, what is the principle of Wheatstone bridge? That P by Q equal to R by S, where P, Q, R, S are resistance in the 4 arms of the bridge, right? So now, as the name suggests, meter bridge. Meter bridge means it consists of a wire of 1 meter length. Suppose between A and C, one wire is connected and it is of 1 meter length, or you can say 100 centimeter. And this wire is made up of Constantan manganese type alloy, because these alloys are temperature independent. So that if current flows through this wire, it is independent of temperature, so it does not heat up the current and its resistance remains constant, right? Let's suppose that A is the area of cross section of this wire and rho is resistivity of the wire. Now again, let us suppose that between this A and C, one cell is connected, and between this B and D, a galvanometer is connected, right? Now how it forms the four ends of a wire. This R in the left gap of this meter bridge, here known resistance R is kept, and right gap unknown resistance S is kept. By changing this value of R, adjusting this value when the cell is closed, adjust this value of R, you can easily determine this value of unknown resistance using Wheatstone bridge principle, right? Let us suppose that this at D point, right, between B and D, galvanometer is connected. So when this key is closed, a current starts flowing. Now it is based on null deflection method, right? So I want a point where this galvanometer shows no deflection. So let us suppose that you slide the jockey over this wire, and at D point the galvanometer shows no deflection, right? Under that condition the bridge is balanced. But how it forms four arms? This one is one R, S. Let's suppose that between A and D, wire has some resistance. Let's suppose that AD has resistance P and this DC has resistance Q. Now you have to calculate this P and Q by using null deflection method. So let D is null point and L is the length, null length called AD equal to L. Now you know resistance is what? Rho L by A. So resistance along AD is, let us say, P rho L by A. Now resistance along DC, this length, if this is 100 L, total is 100 centimeter, it means this one is DC is 100 minus L. So its resistance Q equal to rho 100 minus L by A, right? So this P, Q, R, S forms four arms of the bridge. This R is placed between A and B point, right? R. B and C, S. Between A and D, L means P resistance, A and D. And between D and C, Q resistance. So under balanced condition, when there is no current flowing through this galvanometer shows no deflection, you just calculate this null length L. And after that, you calculate resistance along this AD arm and DC arm, that is P and Q, equation number 1 and 2. Now you divide under balance case, P by Q equal to R by S. So P is rho L by A and Q is rho 100 minus L by A equal to R by S. Rho cancel, A cancel. It becomes L by 100 minus L equal to R by S. Now you know the value of L, null length. R is the known resistance. You can easily calculate unknown resistance S. S equal to what? R 100 minus L by L. So in this way you can calculate the value of unknown resistance S, right? It's very simple. Just you have to arrange this one in the form of Wheatstone bridge, and when you change this by adjusting this resistance R, you can easily get the balance point. So you can find L 100 minus L and easily calculate unknown resistance S, right? So please take a screenshot of this one. It's also very, very important. Next one, last topic is left, that is potentiometer. Now last topic of this chapter is potentiometer. One electrical instrument, that is meter bridge, we already discussed. Next electrical instrument is potentiometer. What is this potentiometer? Actually, potentiometer is a device which is used to measure EMF or potential difference very accurately. Voltmeter is also used to measure potential difference or EMF, but it does not give accurate value. That's why potentiometer is used, right? On which principle it is based? It is based on the principle that when constant current flows through a wire, suppose these are wires, long wire, and if constant current with the help of this battery or cell, a constant current flows through this wire, then potential difference across any point of the wire is directly proportional to length of the wire. You know, suppose this is a long wire and I have connected 1 meter length wire in series so that it becomes very long wire. It's very difficult to handle. That's why 1 meter length wire are connected in series, right? So these are wire, these wires are connected by copper strips, right, in this way. So from A to B, this is the length of the wire, and between A and B, one cell is connected and this one is key, right, and constant current flows through with the help of this cell through this wire. When current flows through this wire, you know, one end of this wire is connected to higher potential, another end is connected to lower potential. So there is a potential difference between the ends of the wire. Now as you move away from the point A, its value decreases. So potential drop across any length of the wire is directly proportional to the length when constant current flows through it. So V is directly proportional to L, or V equal to KL. This is the main principle of Wheatstone bridge, where this K is called potential gradient. It is equal to V by L, potential per unit length. And when no current flows through the wire, what happens? Right, this is the simplest way of this instrument, potentiometer wire. Between A and B, a battery is connected and key is connected. So A and B is the total length of the potentiometer wire, and one battery and key is connected. Between A and this, another point C is connected to a jockey, and between these A and C points, another cell is connected whose EMF is unknown. You have to calculate the EMF of that cell, and galvanometer is collected so that it is also based on the principle of null deflection method. You have to calculate the EMF of this cell. So how you calculate? Let us suppose that you slide the jockey over this wire, right, between this A and C. This is unknown cell whose EMF is to be determined, and this is galvanometer. Now you slide the jockey over this wire. Suppose at C point, galvanometer shows no deflection. It means between A and C, whatever is the potential difference, that is the EMF of the cell E, right now, because this EMF cell is one end is connected to point A, another end is connected to point C. When no current flows, so potential difference along the terminus of the wire is the EMF of the cell, and you know potential difference along this wire AC is what? This is equal to K into L. So potential difference across AC is K into L, and this is nothing but when galvanometer shows no deflection, this is EMF of the cell. So E equal to KL. In this way, you can determine EMF of the cell, right? So I think it's clear. There are two main uses of this cell. One is to compare EMF of the two cells, and another use is to determine internal resistance of the cell. Both applications are very important from board examination point of view. This potentiometer is very important. You must remember the principle and how it works, how it is to measure unknown resistance of the cell. Now there are two applications. Take a screenshot of this one fast. Now applications of potentiometer. First application is comparison of EMF of the two cells, right? This is a potentiometer, a wire AB of length L, and let us suppose that this length AB wire has potential difference V. So let V is the potential difference across length of the wire L, and you know potential difference is directly proportional to length of the wire when constant current flows through this wire. So V equal to KL. This principle you know. Now you have to compare EMF of two cells. So through point A, two cells are connected. First cell is connected through key K1 and second cell is connected through the key K2, and both are connected to a galvanometer. Now first this key is closed and current starts flowing through this wire, and this V equal to KL we know, right? Now between these two cells, first I want to calculate the EMF of cell E1. So how you calculate? This key K1 is, first key K1 is closed and K2 is open, so that current only flows through this cell. Now adjust this jockey along the length of the wire so that this galvanometer shows no deflection. It means, let us suppose that C is the point at which galvanometer shows no deflection, and length of this AC is suppose L1. So let L1 is length, null length corresponding to cell A1. Now potential difference across this cell, this point AC is nothing but EMF of this cell, because galvanometer shows no deflection. So whatever is the potential difference across AC is the EMF of the cell E1. So this EMF E1 is potential difference across AC, and this is equal to proportion to the length. Length is L1, so KL1, equation number 1. Now second case, let us suppose K1 is open, so that cell 1 is not in the circuit, only K2 is closed. Now this time current starts flowing through this cell. Again, you move the jockey over this wire so that it shows no deflection. Let us suppose that at point D, galvanometer shows no deflection, and this length of this AD is, let us suppose that L2. It means potential difference across AD is nothing but EMF of the cell, second cell E2, and this E2 is equal to potential difference across AD, and this is equal to KL2. L2 is the null length corresponding to second cell, right? Now from equation 1 and 2, you divide these two, you get E1 by E2 equal to L1 by L2. So L1 you know, L2 you know, you can compare the EMF of the two cells using this potentiometer, right? Please take a screenshot, it's very, very important, right? Another application is that to find internal resistance of the cell, that is also very, very important. First, last application of this potentiometer is to determine internal resistance of the cell. Suppose this is a cell having EMF V, internal resistance R. How you calculate this internal resistance? This application is very, very, very important from examination point of view. To calculate the internal resistance of this cell, first this key is closed so that a constant current flows through this wire. Now, when key is closed and this K2 is open, so that no current flows through this resistance box, only this cell is in the circuit. Now move the jockey over this potentiometer wire, and let us suppose that at point C, galvanometer shows no deflection. It means the potential difference across this AC, so let us suppose that this length is L1, where galvanometer shows no deflection. So potential difference across AC is nothing but EMF of this cell, and this is equal to KL1, equation number 1. Now another time, first K1 is already closed, this K2 is also closed, so that some amount of current also flows through this resistance box also. So this time let us suppose that at point D, null point is obtained, at which no deflection, galvanometer shows no deflection. But this potential difference across AD is not equal to the EMF of the cell, because here also some amount of current flows. That is, let us suppose that potential difference across D is V and null length is L2, so V equal to KL2. Now what is the value of this potential difference V? Some amount from this EMF of the cell is flowing through this resistance R also, so having internal resistance smaller, so this V is nothing but E minus IR equal to KL2. And what is the value of I? Here there are two resistance, R and capital, both are in series, so total current flowing through this circuit is, some amount of current flows those on this side. This is E by R plus R. You put the value of I here. So this equation becomes E minus ER by R plus R equal to KL2. You just calculate, take LCM R plus R. So E R plus R minus R, this R cancel. E R by R plus R equal to KL2. This is equation number 2. First E is KL1. Second equation is E R by R plus R equal to KL2. Now you divide these two equations. E by ER plus R, L1 by L2. E cancel, you get R plus R by R equal to L1 by L2. From here, you can easily calculate a small r, internal resistance of the cell, that is R equal to capital R L1 by L2 minus 1. This R is known, right? So L1, L2 is also known. You can easily calculate the internal resistance of the cell using this potentiometer, right? And this one is very, very important. Hope you understood. Now take a screenshot, right? After this I am going to end the class. Hope you like this video. So please students, keep watching and stay tuned with this channel. Thank you.